Hello and welcome to this episode of Akrinos Access. I'm your host, Eric Matei, joined today for part 2 of a mini-series we are doing with Mr. Tony Masi of State Optical and Renee Wheelock, also of State Optical. And y'all, in today's episode, we are unpacking all things with these vision care plans, particularly better understanding the economics of these vision care plans, how it's impacting your practice. And we'll also talk about some of the ways that you can better empower your business to be more profitable inside and outside of these vision care plans. So, Tony, Renee, thank you all so much for coming on back to Akrinos Access.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So I'd like to start by, why don't we start by just, why don't you share a little bit about your experience? You know, we wrapped up that first episode we did with a little touch on your backgrounds in the industry, but I'd like to start this episode with each of you providing a little more color to your experience in the industry before we hop into the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I started very similar to a lot of people in this industry. My father is an immigrant from Italy. He came here to the United States. He worked in a few optical labs. He decided to open his own business, AccuRx. I was 15 years old at the time. And I just started working at 15 years old. Fast forward to 2006 when we got acquired by one of the big companies, which was good. And then I just stayed on as president. And worked in consultant roles with that company as far as, like an ROD type role, and obviously still president of AccuRx. AccuRx was the company. And then in 2022, they decided to, move on with AccuRx and kind of consolidate, which is fine. The only issue there was I had some employees that were with me 25, 30 years that, were out of a job. That didn't sit well with me. I couldn't leave it like that. They worked very hard for me for many years. So I felt like when I started State Optical, it was just as much for them as it was for me and my nephew, who was also the part owner of State Optical. So we brought them back. And by the way, bringing them back is bringing their expertise back, so a lot of startup companies don't have the option to bring it back, experienced people. So it was a win-win for me. And we got them back into Ocean State. And here we are almost 2 years later. We're growing pretty good. Thanks to Renee's expertise as far as her sales acumen. And that's my story.
That's outstanding.
It's pretty story.
It's awesome. Well, Tony, I think what's so cool about it is twofold. I mean, first and foremost, your experience around this industry and understanding the optical supply chain, understanding the lab business, understanding what private practices truly need today in their lab partnerships so their business can really excel. But something else that I think is remarkable is, as you said, you're the son of an immigrant, and your father came here and started a business, and it turned into something amazing. So I think it's also something else, it's fitting right now, the times we live in, and certainly it's fitting with our audience here, right? Your viewers out there in Akrinos Access, everybody's on this entrepreneurial journey, whether you're the emerging practice owner looking to cold start or buy your first practice, or whether you're the established practice owner looking to grow or transition your practice. It's in the spirit of entrepreneurship. So Tony, thank you so much for sharing that bit about the journey as well. So Renee, why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about your experience in vision?
Sure. Again, thank you for having us back. And I started out, I'm going to get a wrinkle when I say this, but I started out in the late 80s, and I ended up starting to work for what is now one of the largest chains and vision insurance companies in the country. I worked for Lana Galals. That's how I got my start. And I was hired as one of the first accessory frame consultants, fashion frame consultants in the industry. And that led to a job in training and also led to an apprenticeship through New York State. And then my next job was to launch the very first lenses, the very first transition lenses in the United States, with PPG. And I want to pause for a second to say that one of the first wholesale customers that I called on was Tony's dad.
Oh, that's amazing.
My career has now come full circle, and I happen to be working with his son now and his grandson, which is pretty cool. So I stayed on the wholesale side, and I worked in lens manufacturing and wholesale for the past 35 years, working directly with ECPs, and eventually evolving into a place where now I educate ECPs, I educate opticians and unlicensed opticians and staff members on best practices for their optical departments and for their overall practice. And education is key. And I've been working with Tony. I took 6 months off of my 16-year job, my corporate job. I ended up deciding to leave so that I could make the next portion of my career, the last portion of my career, more impactful. And I decided to vet laboratories for 6 months to try to bring back the feel of giving the ECP the control back that they need and they really are desiring for their lab services. And here we are.
Outstanding. And Renee, I know, you and I have come to connecting also outside of the work you do with Ocean State. And again, remarkable career you have had, remarkable expertise we've got. And look, that said, again, Tony, Renee, thank you all so much for providing our listeners a little bit more of an understanding for those maybe that had not connected with you. Again, y'all been around the industry for many years. So thank you again for sharing a little bit about your journey. So y'all, let's now jump into the second episode that we're doing in this mini series. In episode 1, we were looking at the world of the optical supply chain. And by the way, for our listeners, if you missed episode 1, definitely go ahead and give that a listen. A lot of really great insights into better understanding the optical supply chain and the lab business. In this episode today, we're going to talk about the economics of the vision care plans and how to really optimize your lab partnership to accelerate your business. So as we jump into this, Tony, Renee, I would love for y'all to kick things off by just explaining a little bit, what are these vision care plans?
Do you want me to start, Tony?
Yeah, please. I mean, this is more in your purview for sure. I
think vision care plans and vision insurance, if you will. Okay, vision insurance is oftentimes misunderstood. It's not true insurance like medical insurance. It's a benefit plan that offers maybe patient discounts ultimately on eye exams, glasses, contact lenses for patients or their employers, and they pay a premium for a vision plan, and then they get access to this network, which ECPs become part of. As a provider, you sign a contract with a vision plan and accept set reimbursement rates for exams and materials. So there are positive impacts on this, and there are some negative impacts. And I think that ultimately, it's important to learn about the vision plan / insurance in your area, because that is also dependent upon companies that are in your area and what insurance they're carrying and their employees, what they're carrying and offered. In order to build your patient base, you need to understand which one does not provide the best reimbursement, or to me, most importantly, which plan is going to give your patient access to the best vision. I think we forget about that. And I think
that's a powerful perspective, Renee. I really like that.
Yes, it's key, because why would you want to drive patients into your practice if you are going to be completely limited with the result of the very examination that you've just given your patient, with the limitations of lenses or products? You have to ask yourself what's going to be best for your business model.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that, thank you, by the way, for providing kind of this high level understanding of the vision care plans. Right. And by the way, y'all, again, Renee, Renee kept it very short. If you did want to unpack it more, Renee's an absolute expert in that. So you could contact her directly and she could give you more of a deep dive, a nose dive into the world of
Details,
vision care plans. But that being said, it's important for everyone to understand, and Renee, you pointed it out, these are discount plans. You know, in the vernacular, we'll call them vision insurance, but it's important for everyone to understand there is no insured risk here. And it's when you wrap your head around that, that's where you start to realize, well, wait up, what is this program, and truly who is it serving? Right. And I think that's something also, whereas we've seen, you know, vision plans go from being a doctor-patient matchmaker, which I think we can all agree is a beautiful thing, right? But now, as we've seen over the 30 years of vision plans in the US, we've seen it go from just helping doctors and patients find one another to now, we'll help you find one another. And then, we're managing the whole supply chain. We're dictating everything that's going on in that relationship, up to and including how much the doctor will be paid.
Yes.
So it's also interesting that you also touched on the degree to which these contracts are really what runs all of it. And, you know, that's in part the work we do within Akrinos, right? We do work with a lot of cold starts and doctors that are purchasing and modernizing practices. But understanding those contracts, understanding that pricing, and understanding at the end of the day that it's something that practices are committing to. Right. So as it were, I think it's also important how you mentioned, Renee, you know, I think right now there's a lot of vision plans are awesome. That's how our practices operate. And then vision plans are bad. All vision plans must go. I like how you pointed out it's a matter of optimizing this.
Yes.
Right. And really realizing that it ties back to what's best for your patients in practice. And I think it's interesting to understand the opportunity there in any market, in any community here in the US market, that there will be a role for vision plans, but there's absolutely going to be a role for cash pay and non-vision plan bound services and product. So Tony, yeah, please. What you got?
I mean, you know, there's two sides to this story. This is what I think we need to understand. And, you know, I want to preface that by saying, you know, years ago, we didn't have experts like you, Eric, that can go into a practice and teach them soup to nuts how to, you know, profit, how to buy, how to do all this stuff. So I'm not going to say that the insurance companies or whatever the entities were took advantage. In essence, they were doing a service. They gave these customers options. They almost gave them something that they needed. Where, you know, all right, I see you're struggling here. Well, all right, so we formed this frames and this opportunity to help your practice out. I think like anything else, it starts off in a good manner. Now, whether the customer or the ECP finds that not to their liking, that's for them to say. But it helped a few practices, and you know, it's. And I sound like I'm defending them, but everything has a positive and a negative, obviously.
Sure.
I'm going to stay with the positive side because I'm a positive person, and I think everything is. There are customers that walk into these ECPs and say, "I have X insurance," and if you don't provide it, then you can't keep them as a customer. So to not have it is depending demographically where you are. If you're in a big industry area where all these big companies, it could devastate your business without it. You know, so they,
Sure.
they provided those opportunities. I think they got to get away from the segregation a little bit. You know what I mean? I think the segregation of where and when and who and what you could do it with, I think that's a little disingenuous. I think that it should be a little more open. I would go as far as even, you know, like open it up to the whole market, you know,
Sure.
because everybody needs insurance and everybody needs glasses. And yeah, I think there's we're going to look at both sides of it. They
There's-
also
Yeah.
they bring business into doctor
That's right.
practice that where you know, maybe the refraction costs are low, but you know, it's a numbers game at that point. You know.
It's
Yeah.
definitely positives, and there are some negative impacts, but again, it's just assessing your demographic and knowing your demographic. It's definitely can increase, you know, patient volume in a practice, which is beneficial, especially if you're just getting started. It can help with practice visibility, so that, you know, if you're trying to get your name out there, it can help with that. It can help with, I guess, ensuring that you're providing maybe a longer amount of care to a patient, which is also important in patient retention.
Sure.
And it can help increase cash flow in the optical department. Again, if you know the insurance plan and you know what the benefits are to the patient, but it does always come back to education and educating your consumer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now let's dig into this and maybe look at the world of vision plans from the lab side. And you know, obviously that's huge debate right now. We're seeing states across the US that are, you know, some of which have passed legislation. I know a lot of states have bills going to their state capitals regarding the degree to which the vision plans have perhaps maybe overstepped some of the bounds, right? In requiring, you're now forcing and requiring doctors to use certain products, certain labs. So maybe if you guys can maybe speak a little bit to the extent of that side of things and the vision plans and how it's impacting lab relationships and ultimately the impact of that in the practice to take care of the patient. Tony?
Yeah, I mean, there are opt-out states, obviously. I think that's good. I think that's good in a way because now again it goes back to what I said. You're opening up the opportunity for other even other labs. I mean, I'll talk in you know, in my own realm here. You know, do I like vision plans that don't allow the ECP to come to my lab? Of course not. Why would I like that? You know, I think they're doing the ECP and the customer a disservice with that because now that, you know, ultimately, if not for the end consumer, what are we doing? I mean, it should be everything possible for that end consumer to get the best vision care possible in the timeliest fashion. Because if you're talking about timely fashion, everybody's worrying about the online and everything hurting them. I mean, that's the differentiator. And
Sure.
I think there's a lot of obstacles being put in the way that might not have the consumer in mind. That being said, again, there's a lot of things on certain insurance companies have been making moves to open up that pool for labs and consumers, and I think it's showing. It's going to end up showing that that's the best method. Hopefully, the other ones follow suit. That's all. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Tony, I really like how you focus the attention on what does this mean to your patient. You know, I think sometimes we can, you know, read the news, read the stories, follow the wire, whether it's coming from some of the business publications, or I know the American Optometric Association puts out, you know, always at the forefront of legislation and news on that front. And I think it's important to tie it all back to, sure, we can see things going on at scale across the industry nationally, but at the end of the day, Tony, you hit the nail on the head. You know, right now as we're recording this, it's a Wednesday in mid 2025. Who's that patient on the calendar this afternoon? Who's that first patient on the book this afternoon? And how is the practice going to best take care of them? So I really like how you brought it back to looking at the patient care side of things. But as it were, y'all, here we're talking about lab services. We're talking about modern optical and quality and all these amazing things that can be done with eyewear in correcting vision. So to what degree, and Renee, I would love for you to unpack this because I think this is very much in your wheelhouse, but let's talk about when the patient's coming in a vision plan that may be really kind of confining what the practice can provide to that patient, even though the practice is seeing, hey, we really want to help this patient with higher performance, quality, what have you. Help our listeners kind of understand how to navigate that when you do have that vision plan that may be a little restrictive, limiting. For starters, is there an opportunity to take care of these patients above and beyond what that vision plan is going to cover? And then the follow-up to that would be, how would a practice go about doing that?
I think it comes down to two keywords, and that is understanding, the understanding of the plans in your area, understanding of your patients, and it also comes down to education. Education
Sure.
of the OD, it comes down to the education of the staff and the education of them also understanding the plans in the area, and then building a strategy so that the talk track is the same in the practice and that you're all maximizing the patient's RX ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. And that those are the things, as you were touching on that, and I hope all of our listeners kind of made note of that, right? So what we're talking about here is when patients are presenting with that vision care plan, that discount plan that may be highly restrictive on what the plan covers, understand your practice can absolutely take care of that patient in areas outside of that vision plan. And that patient has the liberty to purchase things outside of that vision plan.
Mhm.
But as it were, Renee is hitting the nail on the head, y'all, because if we do want to grow the business above and beyond what the plan covers, which is what we're all striving to do, right? I mean, last time I checked, reimbursements are just continuing to not only stagnate, but in some degrees even be actively lowered. And that's even before you factor in the impact of inflation.
Right.
So now more than ever, it really is important for practices to, sure, we may accept the vision plans to get the patients in the door, but we really need to be empowered to serve the patient above and beyond the vision plan. And Renee says it's all tying back, y'all, to understanding the plans in the area. So let's know the nuts and bolts, the ins and the outs. Tony had referenced there's probably a few maybe big employers in your area that you find yourself serving a lot of their employees. Know those plans front and back of the top employers that are having patients in your practice. And then number two, Renee, you hit it. Patients. Understand the patients.
Understanding.
When doctors and their teams can better understand the patient and tie back the visual need to the lifestyle, the day-to-day for the patient, that's what's going to hit. And when you can tie back those benefits to how it's truly going to enhance their quality of life, the patient doesn't care that, the vision plan only covers this. Well, I want this because I know this is going to serve my quality of life that I'm looking for. Tony, you had a thought to drop on that?
Again, just keeping everything in a positive spin. Insurance is not going away.
Correct.
If anything, maybe it's going to get even more. In California, what is it, 70-80%? So, those people had to figure it out, or else, they would have been in trouble, right? So, I give it to you from the lab perspective, and also it could kind of morph into the ECP's perspective. My other lab didn't have insurance, and it was very difficult for us, and we were successful. So that was, we were at a high volume, and that was despite not having insurance. But I noticed there was a lot of customers I could not get access to because I didn't have it.
Mm.
Now having
Sure.
it, it's almost like a segue into the business that I didn't have opportunity in. So now that I have it in the new endeavor, Ocean State Optical, which I was grateful for them to give it to me, and a little bit of lower margins, but it's a segue into business that I couldn't get with my other company. Now, let's move this to the ECP level.
Right.
Now, maybe it's a little lower margin. I get it. understandingly, but use it as a segue into second pair sales. I mean, the labs give them a lot of opportunity. Pair 50. They use the UP. We give them a lot of incentive programs to morph that into another second and third sale. So there is opportunity to use the insurance as a segue into more business. Not only that, if you take care of the patient, maybe it's a patient you never had. Maybe now all of a sudden now you create a relationship with them. Now all of a sudden now they're coming in with their family. So again, it's not going away. Use it as a segue or a tool, if you will, into making your business grow better. That's all I would say.
Yeah.
Understanding and education.
I use it in that manner. I didn't use it in any other manner.
Outstanding. This has been really fascinating conversation around vision care plans. And again, for our listeners out there, if you missed the first episode that Tony and Renee joined us, go ahead and find that in the Akrinos Access archives, where we were talking about just better understanding the optical supply chain, what it means to the practice. In this episode, we've touched a bit on this world of the economics of the vision care plans and how that's not necessarily the end of the patient relationship, but through education, better understanding the vision plans in your market, better understanding the needs of your patients, and then constructing the strategy in your practice to better connect with patients, better communicate, enhance that value. These vision plans can work in your practice the way they were always intended to work, which is what? To simply provide patients at your doorstep. So what I'd like to do, y'all, now is shift gears and share. We've had two really great conversations here around better understanding supply chain, better understanding vision plans and what it means in the optical. So, but Tony and Renee, I would love you all to spend a few minutes here, share with our listeners best practices in selecting a lab partner to work with and best practices to really optimize that relationship with their lab. And maybe also share some of the cool things that you guys do unique in Ocean State Optical.
Renee, I'll let you start because my opinion might be a little too biased.
Well, let's see if I can unpack this question. So I think it is extremely important when looking at a lab. You need to find out, will they support you with training? Will they support you with education? Will they support your staff? These are all important things to look for in a laboratory, and to look for, what is the turnaround time, and also having an understanding of product. I think
Sure.
Before any ECP can really make a decision on a lab, they need to have an understanding of the technology and the different levels of technology and what that lab offers. That is something that I find that it's very common that an ECP thinks that they understand that, but it is very difficult to compare different technology levels of product unless you have that good rapport with a lab that's going to explain it to you and your staff. And then you can really, look at your pricing much more effectively than just, let me have a price list, because that is very difficult to analyze, as we know. Lab price lists.
Absolutely.
Are tough. And I think that's, again, it comes down to understanding and education.
Yeah, love it. Tony, why don't you please share a little bit about some of the things that you've really instilled in Ocean State?
Listen, I'm gonna refer to one of the smartest and greatest person I know, my father, who started AccuRx and gave me a lot of good insights. And one of the insights, it sounds very simple, but he said to me one time, he says, Tony, all these customers we have, they have 3 labs that they do business with, and they have 3 boxes, X, yours, ours, and 2 others. He says, you got to be so good that when they're walking over with that special job that they need quick and they need it good, that they put it in your box. And I agree with everything she said, but ultimately that's the only thing that matters. Mm-hmm. That is the end. That's the
quality.
Yeah. The quality, the timeliness, the support.
So sure going to do the right thing for their patient, and that to me is the sign of a great lab. And hopefully, my customers believe that way about Ocean State Optical.
I think
Yeah.
retention rate is something to look at also. We have a very high retention rate of our customers.
Yes. And I can say to our listeners out there, we have Akrinos clients that work with Ocean State and absolutely top-notch quality, performance, timeliness.
Thank you.
The support. So the support piece is absolutely huge, right? Because I think right now what a lot of practices struggle with is they're being forced to play the discount game. And the discount game is not the way to grow a business, especially if you're trying to discount against entities that are far bigger than you with far greater purchasing power. You are never going to win the discount rates.
What were we
and that's where, what you said, Tony?
What were we talking about a couple weeks ago? You can't out Walmart, but guess what? They still have Nordstrom's around. So
that's
Walmart
right.
out of business.
Amen to that. And so again, y'all, I mean, we've seen across Akrinos clients that work with Ocean State just really great solutions all around. So if you do want to connect with the team over at Ocean State, you can learn more about Ocean State Optical, their website, oceanstateoptical.com. If you'd like to book a discovery call with Renee Wheelock, again, Renee is the head of national sales with Ocean State Optical. She can be reached at reneewheelock2020@gmail.com. And Mr. Tony Masi can also be reached at tnm@oceanstateoptical.com. So, Tony, Renee, thank you all so much for joining us here in this this Akrinos Access mini series. And to our listeners out there, y'all, look, no matter where you are in this practice ownership journey, whether you're that emerging practice owner hungry to cold start, purchase their first business, whether you're that established practice really looking to make the most of your peak earnings years, or whether you're that doctor that's ready to look into what's next and transition your practice, our team at Akrinos has a lot of amazing ways we can support you. And the team at Ocean State Optical has amazing resources and support to power your lab. So reach on out to learn more if there's anything we can help you with. And again, Tony Masi, Renee Wheelock, thank y'all so much for joining. Closing words before we log off here.
I just wanted to mention that we appreciate you and what you're doing for the industry too, Eric. And for anyone that has listened to the podcast, if they just mention it when they reach out to us at the lab, we'll be happy to provide Akrinos members with a small gift.
Yeah, same. I think your enthusiasm is infectious. I love your positive attitude.
Yep.
The industry needs more of you.
Infectious. Yep.
Well, hey, Tony, Renee, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all for the kind words, certainly. And thank you all for being here on Akrinos Access. Keep doing awesome things at Ocean State Optical. And on that note, Eric Matei signing off for Akrinos Access.
Thank you.